Welcome to Millennium Daytime Bulletin. I'm Shweta Simar from New Delhi and you're watching Millennium News Channel 24. Today I'm bringing you the latest updates from around the world. Let's begin with today's top headlines. Zelensky says Trump's backing is critical after the United States president berated him at the White House. Kurdish group PKK declares ceasefire with Turkey. Gaza ceasefire deal hits critical moment as first phase ends. United Kingdom gives royal welcome to Zelensky after White House meltdown. Guyana triggers military response after Venezuelan vessel enters its water. Japan battles largest wildfire in decades. Saudi border forces accused of killing hundreds of Ethiopian migrants. Global markets rally as United States stocks surge, gold gains, oil steady and commodities show mixed trends. In ICC Champions Trophy 2025, South Africa's win ends Afghanistan's hope. Mondo Duplantis breaks pole vault world record for 11th time while his debut single plays around the stadium. Now let's look at the details. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky says United States support is crucial a day after cutting short a visit to Washington, D.C. following an extraordinary public argument with Donald Trump. A meeting intended to discuss natural resources deal imploded with Trump and J.D. Vance, the vice president, berating the Ukrainian leader in front of reporters in the Oval Office. At one point when Zelensky tried to respond, an angry Trump accused him of gambling with World War III. Europe, already rattled by Trump's overtures to Russia's President Vladimir Putin, quickly rallied around Zelensky, with the European Union's top diplomat Kaja Kallas saying in a statement that it's clear that the free world needs a new leader. On Saturday, Zelensky appeared conciliatory when he posted on social media platform after arriving in London to meet the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. It's crucial for us to have President Trump's support, Zelensky said in a series of posts on X on Saturday morning. He wants to end the war, but no one wants peace more than we do. In Friday's fiery exchange, Vance questioned whether the Ukrainian leader has been thankful enough for the US support. We are very grateful to the United States for all the support. I'm thankful to the President Trump, Congress for their bipartisan support, and American people. Ukrainians have always appreciated this support, especially during these 3 years of full-scale invasion. Zelensky reiterated in his post on social media. The Ukrainian leader stressed that despite Friday's clash, Ukraine and US remain strategic partners, but we need to be honest and direct with each other to truly understand our shared goals. He said that Ukraine is ready to sign the minerals agreement that he had traveled to the United States to hammer out, but noted that it's not enough, highlighting the absence of the security guarantees he's been seeking. We need more than just that. A ceasefire without security guarantees is dangerous for Ukraine. We have been fighting this war for 3 years and Ukrainian people need to know that America is on our side, Zelensky said. Starmer told Zelensky Saturday that Ukraine has the UK's full backing as they met at the British leader's official residence in London. Starmer expressed his unwavering support for Ukraine, according to an official readout of the meeting from the Downing City. Also, The two leaders signed an agreement to accelerate $2.8 billion worth of loans to Ukraine to be paid off by frozen sovereign Russian assets. Zelensky said the funds would go towards the production of weapons in Ukraine and added that he and Starmer spoke about reliable security guarantees. Zelensky also announced that King Charles had accepted an invitation to meet on Sunday. Zelensky's UK trip comes ahead of the summit of European leaders on Sunday, which was announced amid growing concern that Trump administration push to work with Russia could exclude Ukraine from deciding its own fate. Outlawed Kurdish group the PKK has declared a ceasefire with Turkey after its jail leader Abdullah Öcalan called on the movement to lay down its arm and dissolve. In Saturday's statement, the PKK said it hoped Turkey would release Öcalan, who has been imprisoned in the solitary confinement since 1999, so he could lead a process of disarmament. Also, he follows his call this week aimed at the ending of the 4 decades of armed struggle in the southeastern Turkey, in which tens of thousands of people have been killed. His announcement came months after the Devlet Bahçeli, the leader of the Turkey's ultra-nationalist MHP party and an ally of the Turkish government, launched an initiative to bring an end to the conflict in order to pave the way for the implementation of the leaders' APO's call for peace and democratic society. We are declaring a ceasefire effective from today, the PKK Executive Committee said in a statement on Saturday, quoted by the pro-PKK ANF news agency. None of our forces will take armed action unless attacked, it added. Also, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said later on Saturday that military operations would resume against the PKK if promises given by the group are not kept and the disarmament process stalled. Also, the PKK said Öcalan's prison condition must be eased, adding that he must be able to live and work in the physical freedom and be able to establish unhindered relationship with anyone he wants, including his friends. Calling for disarmament, Öcalan had appealed to members of the PKK in a letter read out by Democratic Party members Ahmet Turk and Pervin Buldan in both Kurdish and Turkish. He said all groups must lay down their arms and the PKK must dissolve itself, adding that his and this movement was formed primarily because the channels of democratic politics were closed. However, Bahçeli, also backed by the positive signals from Erdogan and other political parties, had created the right environment for the PKK to lay down its arm, Öcalan added. Also, Kurdish leader largely welcomed the development. Local reports said that thousands of people gathered to watch the statement on big screens in the cities of Diyarbakir and Van in the predominantly Kurdish southeast. However, significant caution remain among both the Kurdish and Turkish public over what's next step might be, and not everyone was convinced things would change. Last week, senior PKK commander Duran Kalkan said Turkey's ruling party, the AKP, was the looking for the solution, but to take over, destroy and annihilate. We will have to see how the issues unfold in the couple of weeks and days to come. 42 days since 19 January have seen their fair share of uncertainty, hope, grief and anger, but everything that should have happened in that time has. Also, Israel's hostages, the living and the dead, have been released, Palestinian prisoners set free, but negotiations on phase 2, including the release of all remaining living hostages and the withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza, have barely begun. Talks opened in Cairo on Friday, but Israel delegation returned home in the evening. Reports suggested that negotiations would continue at a distance and that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was due to hold the talk late night consultations with the delegation, senior ministers and intelligence chief. For such a meeting to take place late on the Sabbath was highly unusual. No statement emerged from the consultations, with reports suggesting they would continue on Saturday night. Israel appeared to be looking to extend the current phase for another 6 weeks to get more hostages back and release more Palestinian prisoners, but without withdrawing withdrawing its troop. The government here is adamant that the Hamas, the group responsible for the massacres of the 7th October 2023 and the taking of 251 hostages, has to lay down its arm and relinquish any form of authority in the Gaza Strip. Israel also says it is not ready to leave the Philadelphia corridor along with the Egypt-Gaza border, a process that should have begun on Saturday. We will not allow the Hamas murderers to again roam our borders with pickup trucks and guns, and we will not allow them to rearm through smuggling, an unnamed Israeli official said in a statement sent to the reporters on Friday. Such anonymous quotes are often believed to come directly from the Prime Minister's office. Last summer, efforts to secure a ceasefire in Gaza faltered when Netanyahu insisted on keeping the Israeli troops stationed along the Philadelphia corridor. On Friday night, Hamas said it would not agree to any extension of Phase 1 without guarantees from America, Qatari and Egyptian mediators that Phase 2 would eventually take place. Hamas seems very determined to remain a force in Gaza, even if it might be willing to hand over day-to-day governance to other Palestinian actors, including the West Bank-based Palestinian Authority. Egypt has been working on a reconstruction plan for Gaza as an alternative to Donald Trump's proposal to take the area over and evacuate its entire civilian population. King Charles will hold an official audience at Sandringham with the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky on Sunday as the United Kingdom and European Union demonstrates their unwavering support after his humiliation at the hands of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance in the White House Oval Office. Keir Starmer will also host European heads of government and the leaders of Canada and Turkey at a special defense summit aimed at presenting a united front on the Ukraine crisis. On arrival in Downing Street for a meeting with Starmer on Saturday night, just 24 hours after Trump and his Vice President Vance subjected him to a 10-minute tirade in the Oval Office, Zelensky said he was very happy that the king has agreed to the meeting. The offer of a royal audience was seen at Westminster as the deliberate move to give Ukrainian President equal treatment to Trump, who was presented during his meeting at the White House on Wednesday by Starmer with an invitation to a second state visit to the United Kingdom, including a meeting with King Charles. Also last night, there were reports that the United Kingdom would show further solidarity by unlocking billions of pounds of frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. The Sunday Times claimed Rachel Reeves would divert money earmarked for green investment in the United Kingdom to the defense industry. It would be the first time that money from the frozen Russian assets would contribute towards military spending. The irate exchange between the Trump and Vance on the US side and Zelensky, which led to the Ukrainian president being told to leave the White House before any formal talks took place, led to fears among the European and other world leaders of irreparable damage to the Western alliance and the hopes of peace in Ukraine's war with Russia. At today's defense summit, which demonstrates the increasingly central role being played by the United Kingdom in Europe's defense and security, Starmer will be clear that Europe must stand united against President Putin. Starmer said last night, 3 years on from Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine, we are at a turning point. Now is the time for us to unite in order to guarantee the best outcome for Ukraine, protect European security, and secure our collective future. Yesterday, as Zelensky touched down in the United Kingdom's on his way back to the United States, he appeared intent on trying to repair the damage caused by the diplomatic showdown in the Oval Office. He posted on social media that he was thankful to President Trump, Congress for their bipartisan support, and the American people, adding that Trump's support was crucial. On Friday evening, Trump and Vance has accused him of not being grateful enough to the United States for the huge sums they had spent on helping Ukraine to defend itself following the Russian invasion in 2022. Guyana's president says Venezuelan Coast Guard patrol approached oil facility in the latest incident in the long-standing feud between the two nations. Guyana's President government had triggered a military response and diplomatic action after a Venezuelan Coast Guard patrol entered its water and approached as an offshore oil faculty, breaching the international maritime agreements. President Irfan Ali issued a strongly worded statement after the Venezuelan vessel transmitted a radio message claiming that it was operating in disputed international waters. Dismissing the claim, Ali said, "Let must be unequivocal. Maritime also the boundaries that are recognized under the international law, and this is a matter of grave concern. I assure you that my government is not acting precipitously. We are addressing this situation with seriousness and responsibility." He added that he had summoned the Venezuelan ambassador to his office to register his strong protest and instructed Guyana's embassy in Caracas to lodge a formal protest with the Venezuelan government. But he also made it clear that he triggered a military response which included the deployment of air assets and the country's coast guard. He said Guyana remains committed to peace and the rule of law. We will continue to pursue diplomatic solutions, but we will not tolerate threats to our territorial integrity. The United States and the Organization of American States have supported Guyana, condemning the Venezuelans' action, describing the incident as a threat to ExxonMobil's oil operation in Guyana's internationally recognized maritime territory. The OAS statement said such act of intimidation constitute a clear violation of international law, undermine regional stability, and threatens the principle of peaceful coexistence between nations. The OAS reiterates its steadfast support for the Guyana's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The Venezuelan regime must immediately cease all aggressive maneuver that could escalate the tensions in the region. The U.S. Department of State Bureau of Western Hemisphere also reaffirmed its support for Guyana's territorial integrity, adding further provocation will result in the consequences for the Maduro regime. The incident in the latest development in a tense, long-standing feud between the two neighboring South American countries over land and maritime borders. In February, 6 soldiers in Guyana were injured while a resupply mission along the Cucuni River after the suspected Venezuelan gang members opened fire on them. Venezuela claims that an 1890s boundary commission cheated it out of the mineral-rich Essequibo region, which represents two-thirds of Guyana's territory and lies near big offshore oil deposits. The area, which was administered by Britains for more than a century, has been under Guyanese control since 1966, when the nation gained its independence from the United Kingdom. More than 1,000 people have been evacuated as Japan battles its largest wildfire in more than 3 decades. The flames are estimated to have spread over about 1,200 hectares, that is 3,000 acres, in the forest of Ofunato in the northern region of the Iwate since a fire broke out on Wednesday, according to the Fire and Disaster Management Agency. We are still examining the size of the affected area, but it is the biggest since 1992 wildfire in Kushiro, Hokkaido, and an agency spokesperson said. Also, that fire burned 1,030 hectares, the previous record. About 1,700 firefighters were being mobilized across the country, the agency said. Aerial footage from the public broadcaster NHK showed white smoke billowing up and covering an entire mountain. Local police found the body of a person who had been burned, while more than 1,000 nearby residents have been evacuated and more than 80 buildings have been damaged as of Friday, according to the Ofunato authorities. The cause of the blaze remained unknown. 2 other fires were seen burning on Saturday, one in Yamanashi and other elsewhere in Iwate. There have been about 1,300 wildfires across Japan in 2023, concentrated in the February to April period when the air dries out and the wind picks up. The number of wildfires has declined since the peak in 1970s, according to government data. Ofunato has had only 2.5 mm of rain in February, far below the previous record low for February of 4.4 mm in 1967. Last year was Japan's hottest since record began, mirroring other countries as ever rising rising greenhouse gas emission fuel the climate crisis. Saudi Arabia's forces are accused of using indiscriminate force against migrants on their borders, with reports of death and injuries and multiple accounts of women being raped. Ethiopian migrants attempting to cross their neighboring Yemen between 2019 and 2024 have given accounts to The Guardian of coming under machine gun fire and of seeing bodies rotting in the border area. I personally saw 3 people die next to me, said one Ethiopian who attempted to cross a night into the Saudi's Najran province with dozens of others in 2022. One of my legs was blown away by the Saudi fire. There was body parts of the injured and the dead all around me. Another migrant talked of sustaining the shrapnel wounds in his leg and back. A third alleged witnessing the rape of 3 Ethiopian women by men in the Saudi border guard uniform. Other described beating and sexual assault. Another man who attempted to cross in January 2023 said the journey was particularly horrifying. Along the way, we encountered many decomposing bodies that have been eaten by animals. The border guards continued to fire at us as we walked through the treacherous terrain. Bullets hit 2 young women, he said. One was stuck in his chest and the other was stuck in the back of her neck. Also, both the girls died instantly. Many migrants fell off a cliff while trying to escape. Others were captured or injured by gunfire. We have no idea what happened to them. We have no idea whether the 2 girls were ever buried. The testimonies reflect the finding of a Human Rights Watch HRW report published in August 2023, which found that Saudi border guards killed hundreds of Ethiopian migrants and asylum seekers on the southern border with Yemen from March 2022 to June 2023 in a pattern that is widespread and systematic. Using guns and explosive weaponry, the group concluded that these actions may amount to crime against humanity. HRW documented one incident when Saudi border guards shot an Ethiopian man who refused to rape 2 girls after the group survived an explosive weapon attack. They have been forced that a teenage boy was to rape the girls, according to the HRW. In another, Saudi border guards asked Ethiopian migrants to choose in which part of their body they prefer to be shot before shooting them at close range. Now bringing you latest updates on today's market trends. The stock market is experiencing a strong rally today, with the major US indices posting significant gains. The Dow Jones Industrial Average has surged by 601.41 points, that is 1.39%, reflecting renewed investor confidence. The S&P 500 and Nasdaq have also performed well, rising 1.59% and 1.63% respectively, driven by the positive statement in the technology and border market sectors. We can say that the Russell 2000, which tracks the smaller cap stock, has gained 1.09%, suggesting that the bullish momentum extends beyond large cap companies. Meanwhile, the VIX, often referred to the market's fear gauge, has dropped by 7.10%, indicating a reduction in market volatility and a shift towards a more risk-on sentiment among investors. In Canada, the stock market is also on the rise, with the S&P TSX Composite Index increasing by 1.06% and the S&P TSX 60 climbing 1.18%, driven by the strength in the key sectors such as agency and the financial competitiveness. However, latent all the Latin America market and the showing of the weakness, with the Brazil's Bovespa Index dropping by 1.60%, that is 2,000 points rise. Mexico S&P BMV IPC declining by 0.54% and Chile's S&P IPSA falling by 0.82%. These declines suggest regional economic concern, possible currency fluctuation, or sector-specific challenges impacting the investor sentiment in the Latin America. The overall market performance highlights a clear divergence between North American and Latin American equities. While the US and Canadian markets are benefiting from the optimism optimism, potentially driven by the strong earning reports, economic data, or central bank policy expectations. Latin America indices are struggling. Investor may be reacting to the political uncertainty, inflationary pressure, or concern about the slower economic growth in the region. Moving forward, the market participants will likely watch key economic indicator and the global events to gauge whether this upward trend in the North America can be sustained or if the volatility will be returning. The commodities market is experiencing mixed movement today, with energy and metals showing slight gains while the agricultural products and the natural gas struggle. WTI crude oil is up to 0.27% to $69.95, and the Brent crude oil is barely moving, up just 0.03% to $73.20. The small gain suggests a stable oil market, possibly influenced by supply and demand factors or geopolitical developments. Meanwhile, natural gas has dipped by 0.42% to reach $3.82, indicating some weakness in the energy sector, potentially due to lower seasonal demand or oversupply concerns. On the metal side, gold has gained 0.66% to reach at $2,867.30, while silver is also up 0.65% to reach $31.70. These increases suggest that investors may be turning to precious metal as a hedge against inflation or economic uncertainty. Gold in particular remains near higher at the end of the 52 weeks range, showing continued strength in the safe haven demand. In the agricultural sector, soya bean are seeing a minor decline, down 0.07 to $10, which could be driven by changing weather condition, global supply concern, or trade economic policy factors. Overall, the commodities market reflect a cautious optimism in the energy and metals, while the natural gas and agricultural products face slight downward pressure. Investors will likely closely watch upcoming economic data and geopolitical developments to assess the next moves in these key markets. We'll be right back after a short break. I'm Shweta Simar from New Delhi. Keep watching Millennium Daytime Bulletin.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Welcome back after the break. I'm Shweta Simar and you're watching Millennium Daytime Bulletin. Now let's look at some sports highlights. Rassie van der Dussen scored 72 not out of 87 balls to lead South Africa into semi-finals of the Champions Trophy by beating bottom of the table England by 7 wickets. Van der Dussen's half-century highlighted the South Africa's clinical performance on Saturday as it finished atop Group B ahead of Australia in the second and Afghanistan, who are now eliminated in third. The Proteas finished with 181 on 3 in 29.1 overs in reply to England's hapless effort of 179 all out on 38.2 overs. This was after England, already ousted from the tournament after back-to-back losses, had won the toss and opted to bat. Marco Jansen picked 3 on 39 in 7 overs, while Brian Mulder took 3 on 25 in 7.2 overs as England's batting looked disinterested. Also, England has previously lost to Australia and Afghanistan and thus finished winless after 3 games, marking a dismal end to the Jos Buttler's run as skipper. Also, Buttler announced on Friday that he would step down after England's surpassing and surprising exit, as well as their past failures in the 2024 T20 World World Cup and the 2023 Cricket World Cup. Centimeter by centimeter, Mondo Duplantis is soaring closer to the sky and securing his legacy as the greatest pole vaulter in history. The 25-year-old Swede broke his own world record for the 11th time on Friday, clearing the bar at the 6.27 meters while competing at the All-Star Perch in the Clermont-Ferrand, France. I just felt really happy, he told reporters, according to Reuters. What can I say? I come here to do it. I put everything in place to do it. The run-ups worked really well and I just did it. Such is the Duplantis dominance. He seems virtually assured of winning every time he steps into the track. The only real unknown is whether he can set the yet another world record or not. On Friday, he easily cleared the bar at the 5.65 meter, 5.95 meter and 6.02 meter and 6.07 meter on his first attempt, while Greece Emmanuel Carroll set a national record of 6.02 meter to finish in second place. Only 6 men cleared the bar at 5.91 meter or higher, the most ever in the single competition. Then once he had secured the win, Duplantis simply raised the bar 20 centimeters and yet again cleared it on his first attempt as the crowd cheered and raised their arms in celebration and fireworks went off beside the crash mat. That was all for now. Thank you for tuning in. Stay with us for more update. Log in to stay updated with the latest news on the social media platforms Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok at Millennium News 24. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel Millennium News 24. You can watch us on Android and iOS devices as well as on Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV and all smart TV platforms. Enjoy entertainment and latest news with us. Download the Millennium TV app, Millennium TV USA for Android and Millennium News on Google. Thank you for being part of Millennium News Channel 24.